Awesome. All right. So just to keep in mind, those who are on our lives outside of the Zoom, if you have any questions, please put that in the comment section. And if we see it while we're on the live, then we will try to answer those questions during this time. If for some reason we don't see it or you are posting after the live, we will get back to your question as soon as possible. Also in the comment section, if you have any upcoming topics that you'd like us to speak about or something that you're seeing happening in the community or in the environment that you'd like us to discuss, please put that in the comments and we will try to make the class on that. All right.
Tell me if you see the screen properly. I know sometimes I do that wrong.
It's beautiful. So
All
our
right, we're doing
topic
it.
today, yeah, topic today, how to dispute negative accounts on your credit report. This is going to be a pretty in-depth course. We're going to go as fast as possible so that we can give you as much information as possible. But this is for you. So if at any point in time you have a question, stop us. That's okay. So if we don't get through all the material because we're answering your questions, I would rather answer your questions than go through material that you don't care about. So keep that in mind, okay? So next we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Alicia Alt. I often go by Allie. I am a credit expert and professional. I've been in the business for about 21 years. And I've done multiple different things in this space, including credit repair, including lending and real estate. And I'm really happy to bring that expertise to you guys today on how to dispute properly. Ivory Becker and I have co-founded a company called Credit Score Pro. We will give you some information about that because a lot of what we're going to teach today is already a part of Credit Score Pro. So you don't have to know everything that we're teaching and get the full benefits using Credit Score Pro. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I will go ahead and let Ivory introduce herself.
Absolutely. So my name is Ivory Becker. I've been in the industry just over 15 years, maybe 16, because Allie is at 21 now, so I probably need to update that slide. Been in different areas of the industry as well. Allie and I ended up coming together a while ago, just realizing we had a lot of opportunity to be able to help more people with a software that can help with managing credit. And at the same time, we both have a passion for being able to teach others how credit works and what they can do to get and maintain a high credit score, which is why we are here multiple times a month, making sure we're doing these different events. So I encourage you, if there is something that you would like us to do an event on, let us know. Feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can make a post on our Facebook group or the Credit Score Pro Facebook page. You know, wherever you want, comment on any of our videos. We're happy to make sure what we provide to you is something you want to know about. So without further ado, we'll just go ahead and dive in. Allie, I'll let you take it away with these first couple of slides.
Okay. So first, before we start talking about disputing, we want to know what's on the credit report. There's a lot of information that is on the credit report that actually doesn't have any effect to your credit score, but it is important to keep all information on the credit report accurate and reflecting you. So one of the parts of the reports, usually at the top of the report, is going to be your personal information. So this is where your name, your address, sometimes your social or partial of your social, employment history can be on here. And again, you want to make sure that this is correct because of identity theft issues, right? So if you're seeing addresses you've never been at, it's important that you get those removed. But keep in mind that sometimes errors will go on to this personal information. Let's say you went and applied for a home loan and I was your lender and you told me your name was Ted and I spelled it T-A-D because I was mistyping it and I pulled your credit with T-A-D. That's going to show up on your credit report as an also known as, okay? So it's not always that it's identity theft. When you see an error on there, it could just be a mistake in someone having pulled your credit. That information will go there. Same thing with employment history. I get the question a lot about employment history being wrong on the credit report. If I was your lender and you told me you worked for ABC Mortgage and I put that on the credit report, on my application and pulled the credit report, that information is going to be transferred to the credit bureaus and it's going to say that. But if you moved from that company to another one and never got your credit pulled during that time, it's not going to show your current employer. So I just want you to know that you're going to see some things like that on your credit report. It's not necessarily identity theft issues, but certainly something to be checking into. Another thing that you will see on your credit report, the most important thing, is you're going to have your accounts, or what we refer to as trade lines. These are your, if you have a credit card or you have an installment loan, all of those things will be reporting on your credit report. And it's going to give you, your account information, your summaries, what kind of account is it, your balances. These are all things that we want to be taking a very careful look at to make sure the information's accurate, especially if it's negatively affecting your credit score. You'll also see inquiries on the credit report. Inquiries are anybody who has pulled your credit, whether that's been a hard pull or a soft pull. We'll talk more about that. And public records on the credit report. As of now, the only public record that will show up on your credit report is bankruptcies. In the past, we did show bankruptcies, tax liens, judgments, but those are no longer reporting on your credit report. However, just to keep in mind, if you are applying for like a mortgage, they do get a SAGE report, which will then indicate any other issues that you might have on your credit report. So it's not like they're gone. It's just not showing up on your personal credit report. And then, of course, collection accounts you will see on the credit report if you have any. So we'll dive into those a little bit more. There are 3 generally accepted credit bureaus, and that's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. I will say one thing to keep in mind is that you want all 3 of them to be accurate, okay? Not just one. So you want to always be looking at all 3. Is there anything else on this slide, Ivory, that you would like to point out? Okay, cool. All right, so what are the factors that make up your credit score? I think I'll kind of dive into it, and Ivory, you can add anything that you'd like to add to it. Sean raised his hand. Sean, how can I help you?
Building. Hey, yo, this guy right here, one of the hip hop entrepreneur, young legends. He's in my gang. He gets money. Yes, he does.
Yes.
I think that we'll go ahead and
Mute that.
move on.
Move on from that. That wasn't okay. All right. So Sean, if you do have a question, please put that in the chat. Okay, what factors impact your credit score? So we have payment history is the biggest impact to your credit score. No shock to anyone, I'm sure, but that does make up 35% of your FICO credit score. So this is where it's really important, obviously, to make your payments on time. And so anything that would be reporting to your credit report. Note that things that don't report to your credit report unless you personally add them are like utility bills and things like that. So if you are late on those, that won't necessarily affect your credit score, right? The other thing that I get a lot of questions about in the payment history section is that if let's say your credit card is 29 days late, 15 days late, 5 days late, that is not going to reflect on your credit report. The only time a late shows up on your credit report is if it is 30 days or more late. So if you're playing the game trying to stretch money, keep those factors in mind. What does report to the credit report, make sure those are paid on time. And then also,
Toronto, we come to your city.
you might have to
Atlanta.
take that one out. Were you able to take him out?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm distracted, so I don't know where I was off. But payment history, important, right? The next section is credit utilization. That does make up 30% of your credit score, right? So this is how much of your credit are you using, specifically referring to credit cards is the main factor in credit utilization. Length of credit history makes up 15% of your credit score. And this is how long have you had credit? So one of the things I like to just throw a little tip to all of you guys listening today is that the longer the credit history, the better the score. So when we talk to people who want to get in the 800s, I always tell them we can get there once you get older, right? Because we need to have a long history of credit. So the only thing that will help you have a long history of credit is if you have credit cards, because if you have auto loans and other installment loans, you will eventually hopefully pay those off. Once they're paid off, they're no longer a factor in your credit score or your credit history. So it's important to keep credit cards open and active forever. 10% of your credit score is made up of credit mix. So credit mix is having, some revolving accounts, some installment accounts, different things to show that you're able to manage different types of credit. Mortgages would be another part of the credit mix. And lastly, in our calculation of credit scores, 10% of it is made on new credit or inquiries. So really important to be careful on getting multiple inquiries. If you don't need them, don't do it. And also getting new open accounts. If you don't need it, don't do it. that can lower your average age of history. So some things to just kind of look out for as you're building your credit score. Ivory, would you like to put any other information in this?
I don't think so. We do a lot of other webinars that really do deep dives into this topic specifically, but we did just want to make sure we touch on it as we go into disputing and the negative accounts. So here's where we're going to start transitioning as far as the main topic for today. And the initial focus is just going to be talking about what are those different types of negative accounts that exist on the credit report. So Allie, I'll let you, I mean, you're already kind of on this topic, so let's go ahead and finish this out and then we'll transition into the dispute side of things.
All right. So I'm just kind of going back to that last screen, and why we start with that is that if we were to just focus on getting the negative items off the credit report, which is a big deal, we need to do that. But if we were just to focus on that, we would miss a big mark in how to improve your credit score, right? So there's all these other factors, right? So if I didn't have any collections and I didn't have any late payments, but I also didn't have any credit cards open, I didn't have the credit mix, I didn't have history, I didn't have, my credit utilization was really high. All of those are big factors in your credit score. So you can have a really nice, clean credit report and still have a low credit score. So I want to make sure that
or no score.
Or no score. Correct. So how negative accounts affect your credit scores? Obviously, late payments can be huge. The more recent the late payment, the harder the hit. As the late payments or any collections or negative information gets older, and I'm specifically talking outside of the 24-month range or the 2-year range, they start to have less of an impact on your credit score. But that first 2 years, it's what I call a hard hit to your credit. So it's really important to, especially if you're getting ready to go buy a house or make a large purchase, it's time to really hone down and make sure that you don't have anything in the most recent 12 or 24 months, or get, those would be your focus to get off as well. Okay. So looking at late payments, even one late payment can lower your credit score by 50 to 100 points, especially if it's a brand.
Uh-oh.
And it's, oh, what happened?
There we go. We lost you for a second. You're back.
Oh, okay. Oh, my internet connection is unstable. Oh, I don't know. Am I still here?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know what I last said that you guys heard.
Just go ahead and
start from the late payment. So I think where I probably left off is just talking about the late payments, right? It can decrease your score by 50 to 100 points. The newer it is, obviously, the harder the hit that you will get from it, especially if it's a mortgage late. Mortgage lates have a heavier weight to your credit score. Okay, so it's important that you understand that. And as we're talking about that subject, I would also say that, as fast as we can lose points from a late payment, we can also lose that many points or more from high utilization. So obviously it's kind of outside of this, but I want you to know that. Collections, when account goes in collection, it signals a failure to pay and can stay on your credit report for 7 years. Again, if it's a more recent one, we're going to see a harder hit to your credit score than an older collection. However, many collections, and people don't know this a lot of times, they will update their reporting every single month. So it's as if you're getting that brand new collection every month. So you can do all this really great stuff for your credit, and this collection keeps hitting you over and over again. Charge-offs, when a creditor decides you won't repay, they'll charge it off. And charging off is typically the same thing as a collection. It does not mean that you do not owe the debt anymore. I get that question a lot, like, oh, they charged off, so I don't owe it. No, that's not correct. You do owe it. And it can significantly decrease your credit score.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Add to that real quick. So a charge off is going to be with the original creditor, and a collection is going to be either contracted by that original creditor to collect on the debt or sold to a debt buyer, who now owns that collection. So it is possible for you to see a charge off on your credit report from the original creditor, and also a collection for that same account if it was sold to that collection agency, and then you would just see a zero balance on the charge off with the amount owed showing on the collection account rather than that original creditor's charge off.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, sometimes you'll see a charge off, there's a balance on that, and it's sold to a collection agency, which would be an error in the reporting.
Yep.
But yeah, typically if you just see a charge off and it doesn't say transferred or sold to another lender, then that that debt is with that lender at that time.
Mhm.
Bankruptcy is one of the most damaging items on your credit report, right? It can lead to 150 to 200 point drop in your credit score. And keep in mind that bankruptcies do report for 7 to 10 years. 7 years if it's a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, 10 years if it's a Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
You want to go to this one, Ivory?
No,
No, you're like, I'll leave it to you, Allie. Okay.
you're good at talking about this one.
I gotta read it first because I haven't seen it. Okay. The domino effect. These negative items don't just lower your score, they also lead to higher interest rates. So this is really important. And we talk a lot about credit scores, but I don't think that there's enough information about there that why are we talking about credit scores? What do credit scores have to do with anything? But credit scores have a lot to do with everything, especially in our lives today. And I will say personally, I do not think it is entirely fair, but
Mhm.
it is entirely true what I'm getting ready to say. But obviously, and we all know that credit scores affect the interest rates that we get, right? You have a lower credit score, you pay more for the same thing. But also it's right now makes it really difficult to get an apartment. I am understanding that apartment owners, landlords are actually doing a loan, almost like a loan application, like you're getting a mortgage for this apartment. And so it's making it very difficult today more than ever if you do have negative items on the credit report and also those low credit scores. Uh, Obviously, getting approved for credit, right? We know that. But employment opportunities, right? People are not getting the job because of low credit scores or negative information on the credit
Well,
report.
negative information, right? They can't see the scores.
Supposedly they can't see the scores, but they are looking at the negative information. And, like if you're going, especially if you're going for some kind of military type job,
Mhm.
they will scrutinize that credit report. So it's important that you understand what's on your credit. That's the point of that. So why would we want to dispute negative items? Why does this matter? Because we want to get any incorrect, outdated information off the credit report. So then we can take clean up the credit report as much as possible and then resolve what needs to be resolved at that point.
Mhm.
Disputing is super important. I will have people say, well, I know that account is mine, and that's fine. But the credit bureaus are required to report correctly and accurately. And that needs to be challenged to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to do. Okay. And because you can say, yes, this account was mine, but the negative or the errors on that credit report could cause a lower credit score than what should have happened with that debt. Okay. So I'm getting a little deep in that, but it's very, very important that you dispute all negative items on your credit report. Credit Score Pro, our software, actually analyzes the credit report, finds the errors in that reporting, and then will dispute based on those errors. And that's what the beauty of Credit Score Pro. You don't have to be an expert at looking at the errors. And matter of fact, I'll be honest with you, even if you're an expert like I am and you can look at a credit report and find the errors very easily, there is a lot of data that you cannot see. It's on a raw data credit report that is a bunch of code that you can't see and I can't see because we're not given that information. And so we don't see all those errors that are there as well. Credit Score Pro does. So I think that's important that you know. Anything else? We're good?
Not on that slide.
Okay, so step-by-step breakdown. Okay, you doing this one?
I'll do this one.
Oh, yay, here she
I'll let
goes.
you talk a little while. Okay. So when it comes to disputing on your credit report, I think the main things to remember are, Allie really talked about this. It's about identifying errors, inconsistencies, information that's too old to report. A good example of that would be if, let's say you have a collection, that it's more than 7 years old. That is something you should certainly be disputing, and there may be a myriad of other reasons to dispute it. But I'll give you an example of a common thing we'll see on credit reports. We've discussed how there's 3 bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, that are showing your credit report information and publishing that for you. Anyway, so let's say I was 30 days past due on my credit card with Chase, and Equifax is reporting that delinquency in August of 2020, but Experian and TransUnion are reporting that delinquency in September of 2020. Is that accurate? The answer should be no. right? We cannot have inconsistent reporting. We can't have one bureau saying you were past due in August and the other two bureaus saying you were current in August, but past due in September. So that's an example of maybe I was late. Maybe it was in August, but it is the Bureau's job and their responsibility and the law for them to report the information correctly. So what you can start with is step one here, gathering all of your credit reports and looking at the differences between each of the reports. What do I see on Experian versus Equifax versus TransUnion? Do I see accounts on the report that aren't mine? Do I see collections that I don't recognize? Do I see mismatching payment history? Do I see missing payment history? Are they only marking me past due but not giving me credit for on-time payments? That's something that's often not thought about, right? You want the benefit of the on-time payments. That's not fair for them to only give you the negative information, right? So essentially you're going line by line, looking for issues, looking for errors. So that's really number two, right? We're looking for the errors. We're looking for duplicate accounts. We've seen scenarios where a single creditor is reporting the same credit card twice with the exact same information. That's a duplicate account, obviously. And now you're getting hit twice for the same account. So that's marking your credit significantly more negative than it would if it was only on your credit once. So after that, you would be writing a dispute letter to the credit bureaus. So in that dispute letter, you want to be very clear. You want to be specific on what the issue is, and you don't want to be ambiguous or overly generic. Alternatively, where most people tend to struggle is once they get to this step. If they've gotten to the point where, hey, I found some of the inaccuracies, often people aren't finding everything, but they found something. And then it's the difficulty of, well, how do I write the letter to make sure the credit bureaus actually take care of the issue? Well, with Credit Score Pro, as Ali had mentioned, it's going to write that letter for you. Number four is waiting for the bureaus to respond. The credit bureaus do have 30 days to investigate your credit dispute. And then if your dispute's successful, they are going to remove that negative account from your credit report. Something to be aware of is it's not necessarily uncommon for one bureau to take an action when another one or two of the other bureaus don't. So you do sometimes see an item removed from one bureau first, and maybe it takes a few more months longer to remove it from another bureau. And then once you have waited, usually it's about 45 to 60 days, we say, as far as waiting for responses, you would review the results. What letters or what responses have the credit bureau sent back to you? Have any of your creditors or collection companies sent investigation responses back to you as well? Did they ignore you? And then after that, based on what happened, you're going to draft a new dispute or a response dispute. Ali, what do you want to add into that? Because I know I'm trying to stay high level. We're going to dive into some of these steps in more detail as we go on. But is there anything you think that was really important that we call out that I may have overlooked?
I'm just going to say the process, when you break down the process of disputes, it's very painful. You know, I'm a credit expert, look at credit reports. Like I said, I've been doing this 21 years. I look at credit reports all the time. It is a painful process to have to go through line by line, finding errors and even understanding what an error is. I mean, that's a whole other type of knowledge base, right? And so I think it's really important that people understand that we do have a solution with Credit Score Pro. That's my little sales pitch to you. And I'm not doing it as a sales pitch. I'm really doing it as being informative to you that, guys, this is not easy stuff. And honestly, I feel like in some respects, it's on purposely not easy, right?
Yes.
Don't want to get your disputes. But if I told you that I have a solution to make it really easy to find these errors and get these errors off the credit report that is very successful at doing it, and you don't have to scrub through and do all these steps that Ivory just broke down for you, I bet you would say yes, especially if I told you it was free. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I just want you to know we did go by the step by step if you were going to do this on your own without the technology of AI, but you don't have to. So we'll go into that. Okay.
Yeah. So some of the examples of the things that are disputable, accounts that don't belong to you, I feel like that's quite obvious. Incorrect personal information, it's good to get that incorrect information off of your credit report. It can lead to errors or other information flowing to your report that's not yours. And also generally, I just like to have it cleaned up personally. Duplicate accounts, incorrect payment history, outdated information. I think we touched on all of this pretty lightly. But just know, I mean, it's like peeling an onion. You look at a single account can have 15 errors. It can have more than that. There's a lot of information that you can see on a single trade line, a single account. And if you're looking at an app like Credit Karma, I do want to bring to the forefront that you're not necessarily seeing all the data. You're only seeing what Credit Karma wants you to see. There's a lot more data points that exist for a single account than what your Credit Karma is going to show you. So for example, you may see that they have the incorrect date for when the account was closed. They may be showing a balance remaining on an account that shouldn't have a balance remaining. Maybe you've already paid it off. They may be showing different balances on a charge off, right? Maybe one credit bureau is showing you owe 2,500, another one's saying it's 4,500. Perhaps you have a repossession on the credit report and they're showing an incorrect deficit balance. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And if you do start working on doing disputes yourself, oftentimes you'll end up creating a long page of options for looking for disputes. I know when we did the fully manual process, we had a literal 5-page document that went line by line. And we had a page for each bureau just going over, okay, did you look at this? Is this correct? Did you look at that? Is that correct? Right? Because there is a lot of data points that you can utilize. Now, I want you to hear opportunity when you hear that, because this means that even though we have negative information on the report, even though our scores are damaged, we can use the system to work for us. That's huge. A lot of people don't realize we can do that. And the problem is people want to take the easy way out. Good news is we do have an easy way out that actually does work. But most of the time we see a lot of people using templates they just found online and trying a one-size-fits-all dispute letter and thinking, oh my gosh, I saw on TikTok that this dispute letter gets everything off my credit report. It worked for so-and-so. That's not realistic, unfortunately. I do want to take the time at this moment to mention one of those magic solutions that I want to tell you, just don't do it, is claiming fraud on every negative account on your credit report. That is illegal, but it is something that Allie and I are seeing come up quite often on social media. And there are some companies that practice that way. Though they are the minority, if you are looking for credit help, steer away from anyone advising you, whether it's on the internet or you're talking to someone, to do that, because it is illegal to claim fraud on things that are not fraud. Now, if it is fraudulent, we're not dissuading you from claiming fraud. Simply just make sure you are honest with anything you are disputing when it comes to credit reporting. And then I'll add to it, when we say be specific in your disputes, don't just say, this is inaccurate. Okay, what's inaccurate? Why is it inaccurate? Right? And then if you have documentation, you have evidence, supply it, right? If I have an open and active credit card and like use my prior example, let's say they're marking me past due in August, but I was actually not past due in August. I have a statement I can give that shows I wasn't past due in August, right? Pretty easy. We can supply it. Make it impossible for them to say no. That's my best piece of advice, but people often would really like to do things just the easy and the simple way. And it's not always that way if you're going to do it without the guidance or assistance of a software like ours. But let's see, what did I miss? I got off on a tangent.
The law is on my side.
The law is on my side. So one of the things you often hear, or we often hear when we're looking at TikTok, looking at social media, are there's a lot of these videos where they put words on the screen and they say, it's the law, they have to remove everything from your credit report. Talk about an oversimplification of the law. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. Last I looked at Fair Credit Reporting Act, and they've made some amendments since I looked at the actual number of pages, but it was 274 pages. 274 pages means there's a lot that's in there, and it's not as simple as, well, the law says it has to be removed if I don't like it. So there is a lot of protection for you as a consumer. Often we hear only about the protection for the credit bureaus and the creditors, but the law is on your side if you use it appropriately, right? And it's boil it down to the most simplistic manner. Is it inaccurate? Is it obsolete? Is it inconsistent? And if you can answer yes to any of those things, you have a valid dispute. So that's my soapbox. Anything you would like to add?
Yeah.
No? Okay. Misinformation about credit laws and regulations. I guess I kind of already got on my tangent and talked about this a little bit, but so it's really important to provide documentation if you have it. I want to be really clear, disputing is not easy. And people realize that once they start the dispute process, you need some gusto when you're going to do it, and you need to be okay with being told no a lot. Do not be dissuaded when you submit a dispute and you get a templated response back from the credit bureaus that says, it's verified, it's accurate. How often does that happen, Allie?
A lot.
A lot.
Like their go-to.
It is their go-to.
And it does not mean that it is accurate.
Correct.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and so I want to put in perspective why that's happening. So for the 3 credit bureaus, they make money off of everything but investigating your credit disputes. This means they don't care about the process. They don't care how effective it is. They don't care to do things the right way, the ethical way. They only care about doing the bare minimum to not get in tons of trouble with regulators. That means you're going to run into instances where they are not properly investigating your dispute, and you're going to have to just be darn diligent. That is really the only option. So don't let them dissuade you. Don't let them wear you down. That's what they're counting on. But at the same time, persistence isn't the only thing. You do want to have a good dispute, because you cannot just keep disputing and expect it to fall off if there is no basis for the dispute. Okay. FDCPA. Allie, I'm gonna put this one on you. When it comes to the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, what are some of the most common misnomers or myths you're hearing about FDCPA and getting things off of the credit report?
You kind of put me on the spot there.
Oh, I did a little bit.
Trying to think of something. What am I hearing on unfair practices?
So I'll give you one.
Okay,
I'll start, and then this is gonna get your brain firing. I know it will. I didn't have a contract with the collection company.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I never had a contract with the collection company.
That's a very popular one. And that's like on TikTok and things like that. You'll hear people say, you don't have to pay a collection because you don't have a contract with them. And that's not the truth at all. It's 100% wrong. The collection company doesn't have to have a contract between you and them. They are either doing one or two things, and that's contracted between them and the original creditor. So the original creditor could be selling it to that collection agency. So now there's a chain of title that shows that debt was transferred from XYZ to the new person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or they have a contract from the original creditor to the collection agency servicing the account. So there does not have to be an agreement between you and the collection company for the collection company to be able to legally collect that debt. And the thing that's funny about TikTok is, look at the evidence. These collection companies sue people, go to court, win the lawsuit almost 100% of the time, right? And then they get a judgment against the person. If they couldn't legally collect, that would never happen, right? But the truth is these companies, especially the big ones, LVMB funding, portfolio recovery, Midland funding, oftentimes sue if you don't pay. So that can tell you that TikTok's wrong. Yes, you do have to legally pay these, or they are able to legally collect them, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to add about FDCPA? I didn't go too in depth on FDCPA because I do think that we have a webinar that talks just about collections alone and disputing collections. Today's primarily focused on disputing with the bureaus directly, but I think one of the most important things from my perspective with collection accounts in general is I encourage before paying a collection, at least dispute it, see what documentation that collection agency has, if any. A lot of collection agencies are buying just giant pools of debt. They're buying ledgers essentially, and they don't really have any documentation. That's a red flag or a green flag, I guess, for you when it comes to the dispute process. And then there's a lot more that goes into it. There's a lot of opportunity for disputing with collections. If you're looking for quick solutions, medical collections, when paid, will come off of the credit report. But non-medical collections, if paid, don't necessarily come off of the credit report unless you're negotiating a payment in exchange for them deleting it from the credit report. Or there are a couple of collection agencies like Midland, for example, that do have an internal policy that if it's paid, they will remove it from the credit report. So that's my 2 cents when it comes to the collection accounts for today.
I would like to add, when we talk about the Fair Credit, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and you have a note about Credit Score Pro at the bottom. When Credit Score Pro is analyzing the credit report, it's looking, number one, it's looking for errors, right, in reporting. So the first round of disputes may be, in fact, just about errors, right? But then let's say the errors are corrected on the credit bureau level. Now we have to look at it in a different way. Okay, so now we have a collection still on there. It's accurate in what it's saying. So now we want to get evidence that this collection company does have chain of title, does have the proper documentation to show and prove that number one, you owe it, and number two, they have the legal right to collect upon you. And so triggering that sometimes at that point, was just kind of segueing into what Ivory already said, is that, these debt collectors buy it on a ledger and they don't always have the supporting documents. And if it's a servicer, sometimes they have to go back to the original creditor, ask for those supporting documents. And oftentimes the creditor doesn't get it back to them in that namely 30-day period. It has to be removed, right? And so there you go, the 30-day rule, it has to be removed. So Credit Score Pro is going to be a big help to you in respect to that. You don't have to necessarily write to the creditor themselves and ask for those documentations, because that will be part of the process that Credit Score Pro will go through.
Mm-hmm. So the 30-day rule, perfect segue. All creditors, collection companies, and bureaus have 30 days to investigate any dispute. So it's, they can reply before the 30 days, but it's all within their legal bounds to take 30 days. And it's important to know that that's based on the date that they received the dispute, not the day that you have postmarked it, okay? I think that's commonly overlooked. And that's why in the beginning, we were talking about how they have 45 to 60 days. Often you have 45 to 60 days before you see responses. We got to allow for that mail time. And I think this is a good time to point out how we should be sending a dispute. I did not put that in here. As far as how to submit the dispute, and I'm so surprised because Allie and I are always talking about this, but I didn't even make a slide. It's very important that you send your disputes through the mail. I know you can do a dispute through Credit Karma. I know you can do a dispute through Experian. And then there are some other platforms like monitoring companies that allow you to do disputes there as well. The reason why we want to mail the dispute, well, there's several, but one reason is the bureaus or those companies, they give you like a drop down limited option, and the bureaus are doing that on purpose. They don't want to make it easy for you to identify all of the errors, right? If you have all these errors and all these options and you're stuck in this little drop down menu with no ability to write anything else, well, they have control. We want to take away that control from them. And that's the main reason I think it's important. Allie, what other points do you have as far as
Oh man, there's
crossing straight state lines? I mean, I guess, yeah.
yeah, you definitely want to be mailing them out yourself. There's a couple of things too you want to be looking at is you mail it from your address. So
Mhm.
your state. And I mean, I'm very specific about this. So if I work in Dayton, Ohio, but I live in Centerville, Ohio, I want to mail that out in the city I live in, not the city I work in. When the credit bureaus get those dispute letters, they do analyze the envelope that it was sent in, and they're
Mhm.
looking for that stamp from the post office, recognizing that it came from the same city and state you live in, because they like to use this little trickery saying that they don't believe that it was sent by you and it was
Mhm.
sent by maybe a credit repair company or something like that. And legally you can have it sent by a credit repair company, but it's a stall tactic, right? So if we
Mhm.
want to get things done fast, it would be very important. And like with Credit Score Pro, it creates the dispute letter, it emails it to you so you can print it off, do the little sign your name to it and things like that, mail it to the credit bureaus. And you can do it in other ways, like Credit Score Pro, we have a mail dash integration inside just so you can have a company mail it out for you. And you will get results. I don't want you to think that you won't, but there could be stall tactics which
Yeah.
create a time frame that causes it to take longer. And so I highly recommend that you not only you send it through mail, but you also send it with identification documents,
Yep.
because the common excuse for not doing it is either we don't believe you sent it, or we need to validate your identity to
Right.
further, right? So you have to think about it in the terms of the credit bureaus are trying not to do that job, right? Like I said earlier, they don't get paid to investigate this, so they don't want to. So if they can drop you a letter saying, hey, sorry, I don't think you mailed this, or sorry, I can't verify your identity, the more excuses you give them, the more time it's going to take for the investigation to actually happen. And
Mhm.
lastly, I would like to point out, I hope nobody in their right mind is going on Credit Karma or any of those sites and doing like what Ivory said, the little drop down. That creates a code that goes to the credit bureaus on eOscar.
Mhm.
Really, really limits your ability to get a negative item off the credit report. You want there to be so much meat on your dispute letter that the code is not going to work and someone physically has to look at your letter.
Right.
Okay. So you want to kind of beat the system and don't let your disputes go through a computer system and get just coded. Okay, so that's one of the other
Yeah.
things.
And one thing also that I think, actually it's kind of this slide and the next slide, really. Um, I've seen where people, they send a dispute, they don't wait for enough time to elapse, and they're just sending more disputes on the exact same account over and over and over and again. And the bureaus, then you're giving them the right to extend that dispute time frame. If so, that's when they are able to extend that time frame 45 days out, right? So you do want to be careful. I know we're anxious to get things off the credit report, but there is still, you still have to have a little self-control. And there are, I know there are like philosophies out there that you just barrage them with just tons and tons and tons, but that's not necessarily the right way to go about it, because they can come back at you and say it's frivolous as well. And if that's their out. Now they can say that it's not a valid dispute, it's frivolous, and they don't have to investigate. And you don't want to give them those excuses, as Ali had mentioned. So yeah, I think super solid points that you made there. Our goal is always to bypass the uh the basically what happens when you send your dispute in is they scan it. It's the same with the envelope, it's scanned. And if they can, based on that scan, they're going to send just a templated response back to you. You know, they want everything possible to go through that system that reads it and can send a templated response. So that way it means less manpower, less people actually having to read things. So your ability to bypass that is great. And you're not going to be able to do that 100% of the time, but the more times you can, the better. You're providing additional documents, you're signing your signature with a pen. I mean, all of that is helpful to your case.
And let me say, as we're on this whole 30-day, 45-day, all of this stuff, I often get people who will call me and say, "Hey, Allie, I want to buy a house and I got 2 weeks till my lease is up. Help me out." Okay. This credit repair, improving your credit report, getting errors off your credit report, improving your credit score, all that stuff takes time. And not a quick fix, especially if you do it right and you do it in a way that you can also come out in the end where you don't have to worry about a judgment, creditors coming after you and judgments and things like that. Because there are ways to get things off the credit report that could also cause them to just go and file a judgment against you, right? So there's things that you need to do correctly if you really want to have great credit long term and be financially stable. So I just want to point that out because it's not a quick fix. It really is not.
Yeah, exactly. So there are times where you'll see temporary suppression of the data on your credit report as well. I really all I'm going to say here is it's just important to know that sometimes things are temporarily suppressed during investigation and will appear back on your credit report. That's all I have on that, honestly. And there are also times too where a collection company gets a little squirrely because you did a dispute and they're like, "Oh no, they got me," and they hurry and they sell it to another collection company. So just know those types of things do happen. You're not necessarily doing anything wrong. It's not that you're doing the process wrong. It's especially when they sell it to another company, kudos to you. It means you've probably got something good going for you. And yeah, you do have to restart that dispute process now with that new collection agency, but you got a leg to stand on, which is a good thing. And I think often we think there's this magic bullet or this very particular magic way that we need to craft a dispute, and there's this perfect single template, but it truly is as simple yet still complex in some ways, but it truly is as simple as identifying the errors and the issues. Where the complexity lies is just understanding the law, right? Understanding what your rights are as a consumer. So you can do that one of two ways. You can read the law. You can go to different events like this. You can watch attorneys, all of us in this industry. I don't know how many attorneys Allie and I have talked to over the years, make sure our interpretation of the law is accurate and correct and makes sense. Or you can use a system that can help provide you with that guidance and takes into account all of those factors when it comes to the law, and take something that can be this weird, I guess, juxtaposition of complex and simple at the same time, and just makes it a lot easier. Because it is really down to primarily technicalities and minor nuances and minor differences that you see on the credit reports. And that's really all it is. That's what credit repair is when it comes to specifically disputing. So, one of the other challenges a lot of people face once you start really getting the disputes going is, when do I follow up? Here's an example of what I mean by that. Let's say I send a dispute to Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, and I get a response from TransUnion 2 weeks after I send those initial 3 disputes. And TransUnion says, "Hey, we need you to prove your identity." Now I reply to TransUnion proving my identity. And then another 3 weeks goes by and I get a response from Experian, and Experian says, "Hey, everything on your credit report is accurate." Now I do a response to Experian, and then I get another response from TransUnion, and I reply back to that. "Oh no, I forgot about Equifax," right? So all of a sudden it kind of snowballs. And once the back and forth starts happening, it can be difficult to stay on top of timelines. And sometimes you get no response. And when do you know to reply on the no response and send something out again? And what do you say if they don't respond? This kind of tends to be where people get a little bit stuck. Is, I sent my first disputes, now what? What do I do now? When's the next step? And sometimes it's just hurry up and wait. And sometimes it's just, how do I handle each particular situation? So our aim with Credit Score Pro is to take out that annoying part of needing to know when to send a new dispute. And then the other aspect that becomes difficult is, when do I pull my credit report again? How do I compare my new report to my old report? How do I know what's changed on each account? Because if I took 3 hours initially to go through each credit report to craft my first disputes, do I now have to spend another 3 hours going through it again so I can see what changed? Yes, yes, you do, unless you have a system that can do that for you. And that's why it can be quite time consuming to do the credit dispute process yourself. But if you are doing it that way, it's highly successful. If you're doing it just straight template, it's not going to be that successful. It's just not. You will get some things off your report. Don't get me wrong, you will. But you're not going to have that same success rate without going to every nitty gritty little detail. Because that is just what's required. Complexity laws are tricky. Mistakes can lead to rejections. I think one of the more common ones is people are often misquoting the laws or misapplying laws. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. What's a common one that's misapplied, Allie? Probably Section 609.
This is not even a law that's, I think, and hopefully I'm following you correctly, but this particular one is something that a lot of people get wrong. They believe that medical collections are not allowed to be on credit reports anymore because there's a law.
Yeah.
There's no law. There's no law that says a medical collection can or cannot be put on the credit report. Matter of fact, there is a rule that the credit bureaus have created. It's not a law at this point in time, but the credit bureaus has said, hey, if you have a collection that's a medical and it's under $500, we're no longer going to report it. Okay, that's not a law, but and I think that's important to note. But also, this is the one where people get mixed up a lot, and I hear a lot of on social media where they'll say, "Hey, pay that medical collection that's on your credit report down right under 500, and then it'll be removed." That's not true, because the rule says that it'll be removed if the original balance, is under 500. So paying it down doesn't help get it removed, but paying medical collection off will create the credit bureaus to remove it.
I know one that's commonly confused as well. So we discussed how a collection stays on your credit report for 7 years. It's very specific that a collection, for example, from an original creditor that already reported on your credit, it's 7 years from the date of delinquency, right? That collection can remain on your report. But let's say I got a collection from like my insurance company, Progressive Insurance. It's going to be 7 years from when that collection was added to your credit report. So that's a nuance that's slightly different, that a lot of people misinterpret. And speaking with the attorneys we partner with, they say that's the most common thing that they see is misunderstood in disputing. So there's like some small nuances that I think can be kind of tricky without having that guidance. So at this point, I think we've already done some plugs when it comes to Credit Score Pro, but our goal is, let's have the most effective, efficient process when it comes to cleaning up your credit as reasonably possible. That way we can win against the bureaus, right? Let's use those laws that we have against us. And also, I like this: less stress, more success. Love that.
Yes.
Let the technology do the heavy lifting instead of spending hours every single month doing the dispute process. If you can consolidate that into 5 minutes, but still achieve that same analysis without spending 3 hours scouring through your credit report.
And even better analysis, because remember that Credit Score Pro is looking at that raw data credit report, where you and I are looking at the physical representation of what that vendor wanted us to see. So we're not seeing everything when we look at a credit report. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. There's a lot more behind the scenes that is not physically seen.
And we're gonna, oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt to. We're going to look at the raw data report too here in a little bit, so you can see what Allie is mentioning when she says that. And Allie isn't giving herself credit because that girl over there has scoured raw data credit reports for years to help develop the software. No, thank you. Good for you.
Do not call me and ask me to do it because I will say no. I guess you could call me, I'll just say no. But when you have technology that can do it for you, you know, once technology is created and it can do it for you, we should be utilizing that technology, right? So don't call me and ask me because I'll send you to Credit Score Pro. All right, so we right at 6:01, Ivory. So I know we need to wrap up. What is some really important things that we can leave our audience with that can very much help them if they decide to do it themselves, and or if they decide to use Credit Score Pro?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think our track record really speaks for itself. I thought I'd throw up here what happens in the first 60 days for several of our clients that we've had start in the last 6 months, just to show what really is possible when you're clear and specific with your disputes. So we've seen a lot of success with clients that are using Credit Score Pro. But I think what would be great is to actually look at what it looks like. So when you sign up for Credit Score Pro, the AI is going to pull in your credit report from our partner, Smart Credit. It's free, so it's completely free. I know Allie had mentioned that. So Credit Score Pro is free. You do pay to access your credit report with Smart Credit, which is $39 a month, as long as you want access to keep doing disputes. This is your raw data credit report on the right-hand side. That's the raw data. That's what the AI is analyzing and reading. So on the left-hand side, that's what you see with a lot of credit monitoring, right? It's pretty. It's nice to look at. That raw data, if you have a 10-page credit report, that raw data is what? 200 pages, 250 pages, more? So it's a lot of information, and AI in the blink of a minute is going to go ahead, or a second, blink of a minute, blink of a second is going to go ahead and figure out what's wrong, right? And all you have to do is choose what accounts you'd like to dispute, and you can sort it by negative, right? Like we can see right here, we can sort by what's negative, what's not. And then from there, AI will have their suggested dispute reason. If you want, you can also add to it, or you can leave it as is with the AI. If it's fraud, AI is not going to know that. So you are going to have to change your dispute reason if it's fraud, and it does allow a drop down for that. And add whatever context occurred as far as that identity theft or fraud. I think that's very important. Okay, next. Like Allie had mentioned, it will print and mail your it will print your dispute. It will email your disputes so you can print them and mail them. Or we have an integration with maildash.io. We know not everybody has access to mail their own disputes, so we did still want to make sure we provided that. And then the other aspect that's super important, we talked in the beginning, disputing negative information is not everything. So we want to make sure we're optimizing the good accounts that you have working for you. And we're filling in the gaps where you may not be influencing the credit score algorithm while considering your next financial goal. So you're able to pick that goal. Are you trying to buy a home? Are you trying to get out of debt? All that matters for the recommendations on how to build your score. And then from there, your credit action plan is generated considering that optimization options. What's going to boost your score the most right now? What are the most imperative points? And it's going to show you those. And as you complete each of those steps, they're going to be marked off as completed and replaced with the next most impactful items to help improve your score. And then every month, this is updating. You can generate it as often as you would like, and you can get a new action plan, change your goals, all of that. And then within there, we do make sure we give you vetted credit building tools, and we have built-in financial literacy as well. So we want to make sure that you have access to all the information you could ever want to know about credit. So we have a series of just tons of videos in there for you when it comes to that as well. And if you want to learn more, visit us at creditscorepro.ai. We have a bunch of videos out there. You can watch a whole bunch of our educational videos as well that are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the socials. And then we have a Facebook group, Credit Score Pro, the AI Credit Revolution. I'm going to stop there because we've gone over. Allie, anything you would like to add that I did not cover, or should we open it up for questions?
No, I just want to say that we are on all those social media channels. So if you want to know that the information is correct, honest, and truthful, you can listen to other TikTokers, but then go into our TikTok and vet that idea. All right. We do have, like she said, the Facebook page. I do recommend that you go to the Facebook page. You'll see upcoming events on there. That we also have a private Facebook group
There you go.
that you can become a member in and ask questions there, and just get more information from fellow consumers out there trying to improve their credit. Right? I think it's important. But I will leave you guys at that. Creditscorepro.ai is our website. We have a lot of information there that you could check this out. And if you do have any questions, you can reach us at
Oh, I don't have it on here. At
that's why.
info. You can do info at mycreditscorepro.com or support at mycreditscorepro.com. We'll answer both, we promise.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. And if we can help you in any way, please reach out.
Thank you.
Bye.